Hi there, it's Parker Layrisson here, your host with the Ponchatoula Live Show, and I'm super excited about our guest today. Jeff Petkevicius is a man of God. He is a public community servant and leader who feeds people by the thousands, literally. He's a grand champion barbecue, and a barbecue grand champion, I should say, and just an all-around great guy that I'm really glad to meet and introduce you to. So with no further ado, Jeff, why don't you tell our viewers a little bit about yourself?
Wow, that's I appreciate that, Parker. Thank you so much, and it's a great service you're doing with the videos, getting to know people, because we know guys like Donald and Bree, and
Right.
but spending some time and getting to know the intricacies of their life is just incredible. Look, I'm a guy that loves Jesus. I love my wife. And I love barbecue. And I mean,
hey, me too. Well, that's something I think we have in common. That's great, man. and not and yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure. It's interesting you asked that, because I was actually thinking about this in church this last 2 weeks ago, and my life has been such an amazing ride that I actually thought, I got to write a book. I mean, because there's a testimony in there. There's like hardly anybody that I could not relate to, from the corporate world, from government world.
Right.
I was homeless for a period of my life. Truck driver, I mean, you name it. I've done a lot of things that can relate to a lot of people. So it's been a wonderful ride. I wouldn't want to go back. Real blessed to be where I am today.
Yeah. So you sound appreciative of the hardships and trials that God's put you through, but not eager for a repeat.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, let's dig into just that. So, you're not from Ponchatoula, so none of us have known you super long, like some of my guests, like Bree, who's been here forever. So why don't you tell us a little bit about, your childhood and your path to Ponchatoula? Tell us about the journey.
Sure. Interesting. I was born and raised in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, during the Steeler years, the glory years of the Steelers way back when.
Yeah, back in the 70s, the Steel Curtain, huh? Great teams.
Franco Harris, Rocky Bleier, Terry Bradshaw, all those guys. And
sure.
Grew up
One
there.
of my law school professors was Terry Bradshaw's backup quarterback at Louisiana Tech. So,
oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, great time. Great. It was still Steel City at that point in time. It was just hardcore work ethic, values driven. And the biggest thing growing up was, back in those days, was you had to absolutely go to college, because nobody wanted to stay in Pittsburgh. They wanted you to go. All the parents' dream for their kids was to go so they wouldn't have to work in the mill. Everybody wanted that college education. And so that it was instilled in me very early. I was blessed to be the second sophomore in Thomas Jefferson High School history to start on varsity, which was a different story. But that kind of lit my fire in the football world.
Yeah, well, tell us about that. What position did you play?
I played center.
Okay.
I played center there, and then after my sophomore year, moved out to Kennewick, Washington. And Washington State. My dad worked for Hanford Nuclear Power Plant, and went out there, and I graduated from Kamiakin High School in Kennewick. And another just wild ride. Didn't get any 4-year scholarship offers, so I was going to go play community college football at Walla Walla Community College. And I was on vacation in San Francisco. I got a phone call from Dennis Erickson, who was offensive coordinator at San Jose State. And he said, "Jeff, we want you to come down and look at the campus." And I was like, they were already in camp. And I was like,
Yeah.
What's going on? Anyways, I go down there, spend an hour with him, watch practice. After the practice, he says, "Jeff, we're going to offer you a scholarship." And
Whoa.
I was like, what? You never watched film on me or anything? Well, the crosstown rival coach vouched for me. And I got a 5-year full ride to San Jose State.
So you start out, next to the steel mines of Pittsburgh, and then you're living in San Diego with the university paying the bills. Yeah. That's killer, man. That's outstanding.
Yeah, it was a great ride, and played for Dennis Erickson, played for Jack Elway, John's dad.
Wow. And Coach Erickson won didn't he win a national championship at Miami Wrong? So yeah, major league coaches you're talking about there.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It was we actually implemented that West Coast offense, that real wide open offense. We were throwing the ball tons of times and records, and it was a great time. But I look at that now, and that was so long ago. It was like, I remember when we were playing, there were these old guys that used to always come to practice, and my roommate and I were talking about it. We're like, hey, that's us now. We're those old guys.
Right.
Yeah.
That's wild. Well, I've always, San Diego's on my bucket list. I haven't been able to go yet. Bree's been a few times and told me how much he loves it. And one of my law school study partners was a San Diego State guy like you. You played football. He actually went and played in the kind of semi-pro leagues of Australia after he left San Diego State.
Actually, I was up north, San Jose. So I was.
San Jose. I thought you said San Diego. I'm sorry. Okay.
Everybody thinks that, because that's a lot in San Jose.
Dad taught me 2 ears, 1 mouth. I should do more and better listening. So forgive me for that. So San Jose, I have been there. Wow. That's an incredible town. I mean, billionaires in every direction with the tech bubble and all that. And it's just gorgeous. I mean, that's a wonderful area too, man. That's really neat. Well, cool. Well, tell me a little bit about the next part of the journey. So, wild ride from Pittsburgh to San Jose, playing football, blazing the path, going through college, all that. What's the next turn?
Well, I used up my athletic ability in college, didn't have any chance to go into the NFL at all. And so I finished up my degree, and I went into the corporate world, and was on a wild ride. I was in the corporate world for about 20 years. At 27 years old, I was national sales manager for the largest keyboard manufacturer in the world. Did a lot of work here, did a lot of work in New York and Boston, and you just really on a rocket ship ride. Helped.
Right.
Went to a couple companies, buy, sell, that kind of thing, leverage buyout, venture capital kind of sales and stuff like that. So I was kind of like a hired gun to come in and develop new products or develop new markets. And so, I did that for 20 years. And that
what was that like? Because we don't have a ton of big giant corporations around here. We're blessed to have some great hometown businesses, but we think of, say, a Janney King regional office as being big business, and it's wildly successful. And I really admire my friends and what they've done there, but you're talking about a whole new scale. What's it like working in, the high rungs of truly large corporations in America?
Well, I don't think it's any different than working in, negotiations are negotiations and cutting deals are cutting deals. I had an affinity for working in New York and Boston. New York City, my number one favorite. And the reason was I loved working there because they don't have time to mess around. If they like your product, they're going to buy it. If they don't, they don't. They need to get out of my office. Down here, I used to always stay away from doing business down here because everybody's so nice. It's like walk out of a meeting thinking like, okay, I got this deal, we got that, and you don't have a chance. But they're just so nice.
They killed you with kindness. It was the smiling assassin to every deal you brought to them, huh?
Exactly.
That's wild. That's neat. So 20 years in corporate America. Obviously, we were going to get to a major pivot because now you're feeding 1,200 people this weekend in, Hammond, Louisiana. But, what came next?
Well, it was kind of interesting. Another just little side tidbit, no big deal. I did some work in the former Soviet Union with countries of Moldova, Ukraine, and Belarus. Did some work at government levels there with the victims of the Chernobyl accident. And help those guys start some businesses. So that was kind of interesting. Again, that was kind of like the tail end of my corporate life. The corporate life toll on me personally, and my marriage.
So?
And my marriage too. Lost my first marriage because it was just, I was so focused on me. I was so focused on the career and get. It's like, people didn't matter. What mattered was getting the deal. And so, I was driving so hard and having quote unquote business success, but my personal life was a complete mess.
Well, I thank you for your candor there, because that's the exact opposite of the impression I have for you now and the person I've known the last few years as you've been here. And thanks for sharing that, because I think one important part of this show and what we're trying to do here is introduce the full body of who people are to the community, right? Because other people are in that struggle right now, maybe watching this show, and they're going to hear a happy ending in your story with a beautiful wife and a beautiful life and service to God and a great church family right here in Ponchatoula at First Baptist. And I just want to take a quick pause to say thank you for opening up. That you're being real, and we appreciate that.
Yeah, well, I was at one, the changing moment was that I have a dear friend who ran the homeless shelter in Walla Walla, Washington, where I was executive director at Goodwill Industries, and still kind of corporate. And then I went to a communications company, a medical publishing company, and I was living in Walla Walla, but they were out of Rochester, New York. Anyway, same thing, fast gun, boom, driving. And then my other wife decides we're going to get a divorce. So another failed marriage. So I go down and I'm sitting with my buddy, and he says to me, I'm going to cry on his shoulder, like, here we go again. I'm going to lose everything. I got it all back, and now I'm getting messed over again. And he sits me in the chair, and he looks me in the eye, and he says, Jeff, you're going straight to hell. I'm like, okay, I wasn't expecting that. And he said, that's a given. He said, but the question is, how many more people that you care about, their life, are you going to ruin before you get there? And Parker, I was floored. As much of a salesman and a talker and a negotiator that I was, the only thing I could say was, you're right. And I said,
that had to cut to the core, hearing that from somebody that you trusted so much.
Absolutely. And it was just like there was no denying it. There was no getting away from it. I said, what do I do? And he said, you got to give your life to Jesus. And at that moment I broke down, cried, and we prayed together. And from that moment on, my life was changed, because from that moment on, I knew that I had a bigger purpose to serve. I knew that all the skills and abilities that I had to get things done and to make things happen, I was using them in the wrong way for the wrong reasons. So, at that point I turned it around and said, you know what, for what Jesus did for me on that cross, I'm serving him for the rest of my life.
That's amazing. Yeah. Well, let's talk about your faith walk, and let's, back up just a step before that moment, that transformation, of you being saved and embracing Christ. What was your childhood like with regards to the church and Jesus? So, did you grow up in a church? Did you, what was your Christianity like back then?
My parents both emigrated from Lithuania during World War II and met.
You mean Petkevicius is not a Cajun name? I thought you were a Kunas.
I'm going to add EAUX at the end, just so I
Oh yeah.
No, and so I grew up Catholic, but not practicing, so to speak, as much.
Sure.
And kind of back and forth, and never really, because remember, I'm a hardcore driving guy. It's like, I got this under control, and hey, God's going to take care of me. He's going to understand. We're all good. I can do whatever I want. So it was never really a part of my life until that moment, and then it became my life. It became my life.
So it becomes your life. You're reborn, and where do you go next? And what's that part of the journey like?
Okay, so from there, I went homeless.
Whoa.
I went from corporate vice president to homeless, and it was like 2 days after I got saved, and I was working for the company out of New York, and I couldn't work. I was like, I don't know how to do this. I can't function because I'm
right.
Christian. And so I ended up being homeless for about 3 months there, and moved into a shelter, was living there. And then I got my truck driving CDL, and I drove across the country, and it was kind of like my hibernation time with God. Just driving and doing that. And
well, I don't know, my dad, obviously, but I don't know if you know this. He used to be a truck driver too. In fact, I think he was a truck driver when he met my mom. Wow. And I think he was from here to say Miami for Dad's root beer. I have to check those facts. The truck driver part, I'm certain of. The timing and route, less so. But yeah, interesting career, I bet. What was that like? The long road trucking?
I loved it. I love driving truck, love being on the road, love the isolation. It's a great way to see America. I mean, when you're driving an 18-wheeler, you're up top, you know, and you're higher. And I mean, it is a wonderful way to do that. Hard life though, not healthy, you know, not a very.
Well, it's interesting to hear you say you love that, because when I think of you, it's pure extrovert, right? I cannot imagine you not being surrounded by people and action. And I know there's an action in truck driving, but you enjoy the solitude of it. That's really, frankly, very surprising. So you can thrive in kind of any environment. It sounds like, from huge corporate success to being homeless, to driving trucks, to feeding thousands of people, you know, surrounded by hundreds of people. That's amazing.
Yeah, it is. I'm telling you, I mean, even I'm sitting here thinking about it, and I tell somebody my story, I'm like, man, you've been through a lot, you know? But I thank God, like I said, because honestly, Parker, it would be very difficult for me to sit down with somebody and not be able to relate to them. And it doesn't matter who they are. It was Donald Trump. It was a movie star. If it was a professional athlete, it was a guy on the street.
Right. That's a gift.
Yeah, I could, you know, and it's a blessing to be able to do that.
For sure. Absolutely.
And, you know, what God has shown me through that is how valuable and precious everyone is. And how special, and the fact that everybody has a story and everybody's struggling with something. I don't care what it's like on the outside, everybody's struggling with something. So that kind of took an edge off of me in that, to be able to just be a force of calm and a force of love for people as opposed, you know.
What a great perspective. I could not agree more. That, you know, and that's one of the things I like about this show, is it gives us a chance to meet different people, and we never want to push anybody into a place of uncomfortable. You know, thousands of people watch this show each time, and, you know, not everybody is as open as you. But I've learned, sometimes just off the record, in ways we don't share with the viewers, that everybody's got a struggle, just like you said. And when we share our struggle with one another, it does wonders for helping each other, you know, ease the load. To know there's a path. You know, it's almost like we see this, you know, rapids of a river or a creek, and it seems impossible to cross. But if you see somebody jump from stone to stone and make their way across this treacherous path, you realize it can be done. And, you know, it emboldens you to take that journey yourself. So tell us about the next leg of your journey. What happened next?
Let's see. Where was I? So I'm truck driving.
So we're talking truck driving, and maybe just tell us, how long did you do that for? And
I did that for about a year. Then the corporate world called me back again, and I went to work for a company out of Dallas, a corporate training organization. Worked with them, and in the process, I met my wife online.
Oh, nice! And that's a beautiful Caroline, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay, yeah. Wonderful woman.
Met at the Petro truck stop in Hammond. I was driving with.
Come on, really? So you're living based in Dallas, but Hammond is where love happens. At least the first in-person meeting. That's neat.
Well, you know, when I was looking at profiles, number one, we weren't a match. It was on Christian Mingle. We were a match. And then I saw she was from. I never heard of Ponchatoula before, and she says she's from Ponchatoula, Louisiana. I'm like, oh, that's so cool. Oh, I gotta talk.
You were intrigued because here was this long P word that was tough to pronounce, like your last name. And you're like, God, that's a sign. Must be fate.
That's it.
Well, that's neat. Well, let's talk. You're the first person that we've had on the show to have, or at least share, a successful online dating story. And that's become the norm these days, right? It's 2020, and probably more people are meeting that way than anything. But so tell us, what's that like for guys like me who grew up in Ponchatoula and met my wife at the Strawberry Festival? That's a foreign concept. And so if you don't mind, you know, tell us a little bit about how that evolves, and, you know, just give us a quick rundown on that to the extent you're comfortable with it. Because I think folks would love to hear about that.
No, actually, I think it's probably more productive and effective than the standard traditional ways of dating, because when you're online, well, nowadays you can check somebody's background, and she had a criminal.
Right. Well, she's not only beautiful and charming, she's a smart woman. She's very bright. These Ponchatoula girls know what they're doing, Jeff. You're going to learn more and more. Good for her.
It gives you that opportunity to get to know somebody without the uncomfortableness. You know, it's easier to share. Just like online, people say stuff online they would be in person. So it allows you to go to that deeper level, and just really get to know people on a deep level through that way of communicating. So, I mean, I think it can be a very powerful tool and work very well, for sure.
That's wonderful. What a blessing. So you guys meet, and you're living in Dallas, and she's obviously here. Yeah. How long until the call of Ponchatoula strawberries and this beautiful woman, brings you here into our lives?
Well, it was this is funny because it was like, okay, then we fall in love, and it's like, okay, well, I proposed to her, and we're going to get married. And because of what I was doing, I could live anywhere, because I was working the New York market. And so I was traveling back to New York, so I could work remotely from anywhere. So I said, well, I'll just move to Ponchatoula. So the weekend I was scheduled to move to Ponchatoula was Katrina.
Whoa, yikes.
I was thinking about that when I was coming in, and I'm like, maybe that was a forethought, I'm dealing with disasters and those kind of things. And so, yeah, I moved down, and obviously that got delayed with me going back and getting my stuff and coming back. But, and so it was about 2 years after 2 years after we met that we got married. And, so
that's so neat. And so you've been here in Ponchatoula, this area, ever since, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's do a quick Ponchatoula, first impression, the community, the city. This is a place, it's obviously very different than Dallas and New York, the two places that are central in your life at that moment. I would imagine incredibly different than Pittsburgh and Washington and San Jose and all the other places you'd been. What'd you think of it?
Well, I mean, when you come into a town and they have a pet alligator, one of the first things you think of is, okay, this is interesting. I'm sure there's things. And the community for somebody coming in from the outside, the community you feel welcome. I mean, it has good old hometown Americana, drinking coffee at the coffee shop, just people visiting with each other. For all the reasons I didn't like doing business here, I loved the fact that I was going to be living here and becoming a part of the community. So yeah, they embraced me. I never felt like an outsider at all.
So you were welcome from the get-go. That's good. That's wonderful. Now look, we're going to do something a little different here because this is a live show. But I noticed that the sun has shifted a little bit since we started this. Mm-hmm. So if you don't mind, we can get you look fine, but I want to make sure we don't lose sight of you. There we go. We just good adjustment there.
That's better.
Want to make sure. Yeah, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure we didn't have one side of your face super bright and the other side, dark side of the moon, and the inability to kind of see you because you're so energetic and lively. So we're talking about living in Ponchatoula. You get here, you're still in corporate America at this point, right? I haven't heard a word about barbecue yet. You're obviously embraced Christianity and you're, on that journey, but we're not yet talking about, doing like Jesus did, feeding thousands, running into the eye of hurricanes to take care of first responders, all this stuff that we know you for now. So let's just talk about, kind of what's next. And heck, we hadn't even talked barbecue yet too, another topic, but let's keep on this journey and tell us about what came next and how you got to where we are today.
Sure. Well, my father-in-law has a water treatment company in New Orleans, and he's been doing that for 50 years or however long he's been doing it. And, I just kind of got to the spot to where I was like, the corporate world, I'd kind of had my fill of it. I'm kind of done with that. And so I actually went to work for him. And so I was working and we were selling chemicals and water treatment and servicing boilers and cooling towers throughout New Orleans area, South Louisiana. And at the same time, he had bought a second place up in Magnolia, Mississippi, and he grew up as a machinist. And so he put a brand new machine shop up there. And what he said, okay, I got this machine shop. What do we do? Jeff, what do you want to make? And he's like, hey, how about if we make a barbecue pit? And I'm like, oh, that's cool. And so we made a smoker, right? So then we sold it and we started making these smokers. And then I'd heard about Ponchatoula, I heard about the Ponchatoula cook-off. In fact, I'd walked around the year before the cook-off. And so I called the organizer and I said, hey, I want to be a vendor they said, well, we don't have any vendor slots. I said, well, we make pits, is there any way? He said, no. I said, well, can I cook it? He goes, yeah. So I'm like, oh, okay. So the very first contest I ever cooked was here in Ponchatoula in downtown.
You got to be kidding me. So your barbecue career didn't start till you got here?
No.
So you came through Texas and you didn't pick up barbecue there. It started in Ponchatoula. That's amazing.
Yeah, and 2010, and I cooked Ponchatoula. Didn't know what I was doing, and I think I got like a 12th place chicken call or something like that. But just hearing my name, I was like, yeah, incredible, and so I was hooked. Once that contest took place.
So what you're telling me is, even though you've gone on, and we're going to talk about your, storied career in barbecue, because you're a grand champion with all these titles and wins that I don't want to hear about. I know our viewers do, but there are at least 11 good old boys from Ponchatoula who can claim, accurately that they outcooked you and beat you in at least one competition. Is that what I'm hearing?
And there's 3 more, because I kept cooking it, and then I cooked in Hammond. So yeah, there's a bunch. Hey,
that's great.
There's a bunch of good cooks in Ponchatoula, Hammond. I mean,
yeah. You're right about that. Look, you can tell you're talking to a guy who's done a lot of good Ponchatoula eating over the years. We're blessed with tons of great cooks. Well, let's talk about the journey to, grand championing, win after win, all this competition. How does it ramp up from small town, stuff to, bigger, better things that we know you've accomplished? Tell us about that.
So I'm hitting contests. I'm kind of getting into it, and then all of a sudden I decide, this is something I really want to do. And so I start competing more. I start going, and I start doing KCBS, which is the national sanctioning body for contests. And it took me 33 contests before I won one. And one of the funniest stories along that journey was the guys on the tour, they embrace you once they realize you're serious, and they'll give you help and, help along the way. Well, I had T. Wayne Abshire was a good friend of mine, and Brian Lips, and they embraced me and helped me out, and, with recipes and cooking techniques and all these kinds of things and presentation. And so now I'm starting to get better. Now I'm starting to get calls. Now, I'm doing better. I'm bringing home some money. I'm starting to work my way up.
Yeah.
So I'm cooking Hammond at the Blues and Barbecue, right? And Brian the week before says, hey, pork, no sweet. The judges, they're not reacting to sweet at all. You got to take anything sweet out of your pork. The judges won't do it, right? So I take all the sweet out of my pork. In the pro division, dead last. Now I go over to his trailer, and he's out doing some stuff. I go up into his trailer. His pork's sitting on the counter. I take a bite of it. It's like a candy apple. I'm like, what is up with this? So that was the bad news. The good news is the Sunday after that, I get a call from Ron Walker. Ron Walker was on a team called Motley Q Crew, which is Guy Fieri's team.
Oh, wow.
Earlier in the fall, they had won the American Royal, the world championship. And he says to me, Jeff, you mind if I come and cook with you? I'd like to help you out. I was, of course. So he came and cooked with me in Slidell. I took 10th place in pork there. And from that point on, I was with his help and coaching, I started winning. Pork, one time I was ranked 3rd in the nation, won more money on my pork.
Holy moly.
Avenue in Washington, D.C., I took 4th place in pork. So, yeah, it's an interesting story how on one hand, somebody wants to kind of mess with you, and then but good comes out of the bad,
Sure. Yeah. Wow. That's an amazing story. Well, tell us this, was that Fieri connection through your friend? Is that how you got into TV? I mean, how do you end up going to cook barbecue on TV and becoming nationally famous? How'd that all go down?
That is a great question, and I don't know the answer to it. It could, because as a matter of fact, they were doing they wanted audition tapes, for barbecue pitmasters at the time, and I'd sent it in like the previous, I think, 2 years. Nothing happened, and they would film at contests. So I was around what they were doing and whatnot. So the year that I was on, I got a call from the producer, and he says, Jeff, you need to send in an audition tape. I'm like, nah, look, that's not for me. It goes, no, Jeff, you need to send in a tape. I was like, oh, okay. So I put together a 2-minute little, hey, this is Jeff. I cook barbecue. Here you go, blah, blah, blah. So about 4 weeks later, I get the call. Hey, you're on the show. so it was a great experience and an amazing ministry tool because name my team, give it to God.
Right.
We'll talk about Jesus on that stage, in that environment. And they continue to play the show. I don't know how many years ago it's been, but they continue to show the episode.
And you can also download it for those that don't see it live or whatever. You can download it through services like I did it through Apple TV. It's one of the few times my wife Brandy gave me permission to pay like $2.99 for a single episode. But I'm like, baby, you gotta let me. That's my buddy Jeff. It's Bree's buddy. We gotta watch. And she said, okay, that's cool. But that's really neat. That was a fun episode to watch. And, you made us proud. It was cool. This is a big week for TV here in Ponchatoula because our very first guest on this show, Mary Beth Crevetto and her family, who you know well through your church, Mary Beth was on Family Feud last night with Kevin and the kids. And it was really interesting to see. Their son, Greg, worked for me for about 5 years when he was at Southeastern. And anyway, great. So those of you that have a chance, go check that out. Go check out Jeff on Barbecue Pitmasters. We're now getting a lot of little, TV personalities here in Ponchatoula. Well, now that we're talking barbecue, let's talk about your current project, United by Barbecue. I know just a little about it because my brother Bree's been involved, and obviously you guys have you spearheaded bringing together this community to serve others throughout the whole southern region, from hurricane victims in Lake Charles to hurricane victims in Alabama and much more. Tell us about that. How'd you get started? What do you do? The who, what, when, where, why. Just tell us about United by Barbecue.
Sure. It kind of goes back to doing the competition barbecue deal. And then when the floods hit here in 2016, I made a call to Stan Hayes at Operation Barbecue. And I said, hey, this area's hit hard. We need some help. And I knew that he was doing what he did. Up until that point in time, that was their biggest deployment ever when they came down and we cooked out of the school next to Harvest in Hammond. Right. And I don't know how many, I think we did 250, maybe 300,000 meals. And
holy moly.
Yeah. So I was just volunteering. I was just like, okay, and so we're running pits and doing things and cooking and getting it done. And then I worked with them. That was 16, 17, 18. And I worked on a lot of deployments with them. And they have grown and are a fantastic organization. They're huge. They're international now with what they do. But they have yet to beat my one-day record. Now,
what is the one-day record? Tell us about that. I want to hear. Let's talk about the stats.
You have a connection to this because your brother was there. It was in Houston during those. He was doing sides and opening cans, and he was working his butt off doing that. Sure. Well, one day, I was running 9 commercial pits. We cooked 55,000 meals in one day.
Holy moly. That's amazing.
The record's never been beaten, but so to move along.
55,000. That's unworldly.
Yeah, it was a lot. And so, I mean, I love that idea. I love cooking for, the whole disaster relief and helping people when they need it. And so, but what I realized was there's a lot of times people need help in these disasters, but the big folks, because they're big, it's hard for them to service those folks. And so I thought back then, and it just kind of incubated for a while, that it would be great to have something locally based where we're out of here and we can help people locally. We can plug in, if we want to go somewhere, we can plug into other organizations. We can help people plug in, because when there's a disaster, there's a storm, there's a flood, there's something like that, people want to help. They don't know how. Right. They're like, what do I do? Where do I go? How do I help? And so we want to be a vehicle for helping them do that, put feet on the street, because I've shared this with groups I've talked to. It is, with the way the world is today, with how the level of anger and angst between groups and people, I'm going to tell you something. You really want to get recalibrated about how people are and how you feel about people. You go out and you cook for people who have just lost their house, have been devastated, haven't had a hot meal in 2 or 3 days. And you go give of yourself in that kind of an environment, and you're going to be so much more blessed than the blessings that you're going to give there. And so there's like a 3 or 4 sided prong to what I'm trying to do with United by Barbecue. It's like, have that disaster relief, be able to help people, be a vehicle for those of us in our community to help out. And,
Sure.
And when people really need it. And then we also helped with Donald, his fundraiser. And
yeah, Donald Burton. He was a guest on the show. For those of you that saw that, great guy, one of the best Ponchatoula folks there is. And you guys knocked it out the park. He's been fighting cancer for a long time. Y'all were able to raise a ton of money to help pay for his, expenses. And could have never done that had you not, put in that sweat equity and had the vision for how to do it, because you're able to create great food at a low cost. And it's just a perfect vehicle for charitable endeavors like that. It's really amazing.
Yeah, I think once you get the message out there, and that's the big thing that I'm involved with right now, is because what I shared with you that we're really in the mode of fundraising right now to get our equipment and get our resources for next year, because we were kind of chasing behind the ball on the hurricanes this year. We still got out and fed a lot of people and did a lot of.
Let's take a brief moment to tell folks how they can help, like how they can write the check, where they can send it. How can we help United by Barbecue? And then we'll get into more specifics, because you guys have fed hurricane victims, local folks. You're doing good work, and these are reputable folks that we can trust with our money. Where do we send it? Give us the details, please.
We've got a website, unitedbybarbecue.com, and you go there, there's a donate button.
Perfect.
You can donate online, and we have an online donation account through First Baptist. There's an address you can send a check. But like I said, that's real important for us right now, because what we want to do is we want to be ahead of the game for next season, next hurricane. We want to have 2,000 meals, 6,000 meals frozen in S&W in their freezer, so that when something hits, we can be on the ground feeding people right away. Yeah. And get resupplied and do those kind of things. But I was thinking about it, and it's like, we're working real hard at quote branding the organization is the one that helps people when they really need it, and that just makes people feel good. And there's just a lot of goodness about it. And when we're talking about companies partnering with us, that's the same thing. We want to bleed over into their organization. It's like, hey, these guys, look at what they're doing. We want them to share in that moment, because there's something extremely special about barbecue, and especially when people are struggling, because somebody opens up a box of barbecued chicken, barbecued pork, barbecued whatever, it just immediately takes them back to being a kid and running around and in the backyard and pawpaw, and it's an emotional packed meal. And that's exactly what we want when we're cooking for people in that situation. Like we just were down in Golden Meadow and Leeville and Galliano, and actually we cooked here, which was really cool. And then we took a bunch of meals down there, but you could just see the people, oh man, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Love it. And so we just want to make that available. That's our whole organization. That's what we're doing.
What an amazing calling. So you mentioned First Baptist Church and S&W. Why don't we take a minute to walk through some of your strategic partners that have been helping you and what they're doing? And, let's just talk about some of the folks involved that are helping you with this. And then we can get into more of kind of the details of what y'all been doing.
Sure. First and foremost would be Bree, brother. And I mean, he has been amazing in his support and commitment and desire to see this thing really come to fruition. Without him, I don't know that I could absolutely do this by myself. So the two of us are a great team working together.
Let me say, I know he loves working with you. You just, you see his face light up when you guys have a project to run out to. So thanks for saying that.
Yeah, no, he's got an amazing heart to serve, and it's wonderful to be around. It encourages me, motivates me. S&W, Paul Spalita and family, they've been off the chart phenomenal. Pond Foods has helped. Our Daily Bread Food Bank, John, that whole group has been phenomenal in getting us meat and product to cook when we've had to go out on disasters. Let's see. I'm trying to think. There was one other.
Now, you mentioned First Baptist Church, and what's their role in this? I know that they
Yeah, they're coordinating all the credit card transaction donations.
Gotcha. Perfect. Yeah.
Go there instead of like a PayPal account, it just goes to that account, and then they cut us the check. And yeah, so we've had just Sanderson Farms.
Great. Yeah. Great resource.
Be supportive. I mean, they're like, pallets of chicken at a time. Just come and pick them up, Jeff. Come and pick them up, whatever you need. So yeah, this community is phenomenal. That's my job over the next, however long, years and years I do this, but immediately is just to get out there and talk to them and say, hey, here's what we're doing. Here's what we're up to. And we want you to be a part of it, for sure. Well,
that's great. Well, thanks for sharing that, because I know people love to hear about who's involved, and there's so many different touch points there. You mentioned this company, and it's like, oh, I know them. This church. I mean, who's got more credibility than First Baptist Church? When you know that they're handling the money, it's, being protected and well spent and going into true service, And what I love, you mentioned being inspired by others that you're serving with, like my brother Bree. I love the example that you're setting for young people. And I'll give, an example here. So, when you guys go into Lake Charles, into the devastation that they faced following the hurricane, obviously, you and Bree are leading the charge, and you're bringing this pack of great folks over there, and everybody's going over there, and it's, it's hard going. You're sleeping in trucks and campers and whatnot for a week in the heat. But what I love is you're bringing along younger folks, like my nephew, Colin, who's in his early 20s, and, he's a great guy. He's, serving us on the streets of the police department. He served us in the Army, great guy, but I don't think he'd ever seen anything like that. And spending a week with these folks that have been through that, and seeing you and Bree and so many others give of yourselves, you're just teaching this young man how to be a great man. And he's just one of many. So thanks for doing that. Keep it up. We want to help. My law firm will get involved in helping in the ways that we can. And just thank you, Jeff. And to our viewers, if you have the ability through monetary, financial resources, sweat equity, whatever, please reach out to these guys. Go to the website. I can promise you they're going to put your money, your time, your energy to good use. So thanks so much for that, Jeff.
Thanks for sharing. A lot of times you're just doing things. And when you were sharing that about your nephew, it just reminded me that a lot of the best way to preach Jesus is by not saying a word.
Great point. Yeah.
By what we do and how hard we work. Now, it's exhausting work, but I love it. But you absolutely love it. So I appreciate you sharing that with me, because that means a lot to me. It really does.
Well, it meant a lot to our whole family, and ours is just one of, I think you guys had dozens of fellows, or a dozen at least, guys doing that. And I can't imagine how everybody in each of those families was impacted by what y'all did. Not to mention the literally hundreds of thousands of people you're serving, when you're doing things like serving 55,000 meals in one day, hundreds of thousands of people overall, in different campaigns, you're changing lives, and because you're right about the power of barbecue, right? It gives us all this magical 4th of July with Pawpaw, nostalgia. And if you can give somebody that glimmer of hope in their darkest moment, you could be, keeping the worst outcomes from happening. And you're a guy who has seen low points in your life and challenges, and know that things can get tough when you don't have a home, when you're robbed of that. And so I really admire what you do. I have kept you a little longer than we planned, and so I thank you for your patience on that front. But before we close up, is there anything else you want to share with our viewers about yourself, about your organization, just anything at all on your mind?
Well, thanks for the opportunity, Parker. I mean, I really appreciate it. And I know you have your audience. It's a wide audience here in Ponchatoula. I know the community is strong, and we'll bind together. Listen, I am so looking forward to getting out. Get in touch with me. I'd love to come to talk to you, your company, your group, your civic group, whoever it is. I'd love to get in front of them and share, what we're really all about. Because the other part of it is, we're about touching lives. And I work real hard at not getting wrapped up into the numbers, and when I refer to numbers, I'll say, we fed 1,200 people, not 1,200 meals. We fed 1,200 people. We fed 1,000 people. But this last deployment and feeding that we did down in Golden Meadow and Galliano and Leeville, I tried to get some other organizations to go and deploy there, but it was too small, you know, and I never want a need to be too small for us. That's what we do. You know, I mean,
right.
if it's 100 people, 150 people, it doesn't matter. Those are 150 hurt and hungry people. We're going, and, you know, and,
sure.
and we're going to go down there and feed them. So, and
because those are real lives. These are people going through something and they need you. And that's an amazing perspective.
And our group is we welcome you to come and join us, be a part of it, however you want to, however you can. Kids, bring them out. You know, I think, you know, people always want to go on mission trips, you know, and it's like, okay, you don't have to go to South Korea or, you know, Africa or, you know, I mean, those are great places. Don't get me wrong.
Right. Yeah, sure.
But you want a mission trip? Come with me when we serve barbecue. You know? You're going to see people who need help, need hope.
Yeah.
You can see the power of Jesus in giving of yourself. So
well, you mentioned earlier, you can do it right here in our backyard at Our Daily Bread.
Right.
Food insecurity is worse than ever, you know, due to COVID and the economy and all that. So, you know, there are tons of human lives that need help right here. So thank you for serving the locals. And then, you know, you're out there doing the big things in big cities like Houston and other places like Lake Charles and Alabama as needed. But I really admire that you're helping out here too. One more question. A really smart, bright guy that I know suggested that I should ask some guests if they could only hang out with 3 people ever. And I assume, and spoiler alert, Jeff gave me this question earlier, which I thought was probably, but I assume, Jeff, the question is open to dead or alive or, you know, whenever, wherever. But Jeff, if you could hang out with 3 people, who would they be?
Well, first would be Jesus. You know, that's almost,
Amen.
You know, it's like, you know, can you imagine hanging out with Jesus for the weekend? That he would be number one. George Washington would be one. And for me, football wise, probably Vince Lombardi.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Yeah.
Let me ask you, Parker, who are your 3?
That's a really great one. Well, first of all, I would consider Jesus like a bonus extra, right? So it's 3 people and 1 God. How about that? Yeah. And then I would just have to, you know, I'm gonna say my wife and my 2 sons in case they're watching. But I sure admire your picks. I mean, heck, it's tough to beat those.
Hey, let me just take a minute. I want one more story I want to share with you. I think I've shared this with you before. But I want to share with everybody watching. If you watch to this point, you are a dedicated fan.
Yeah.
Listen, I want to tell you a story. Starts off sad, gets really cool. 13 years ago, I got a phone call no parent ever wants to get. My daughter, 19 years old, freshman in college, full academic scholarship at Berkeley. Wasn't my choice. Amazing.
You know, my dad went to Berkeley, so don't bash it too bad in case he's watching.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, back in the 60s too. Yeah.
Well,
he had to leave this off his resume to get elected when he was sheriff, you know. I'm sorry to interrupt your story, but I bet you weren't expecting a Berkeley connection on this call.
But anyways, she was training for her first half marathon, standing in an elevator, a blood clot hit her heart. She passed away.
Oh my God.
Sudden, tragic, unexpected. That's the sad part. The cool part is 2 weeks before she died, her and her friends were talking, said, if you had the best job in the world, regardless of money, what would you do? And Brooke said, I'd be the thank you fairy. And I'd go around and thank everybody who needs to be thanked, but hasn't been. So when I heard Dad at her funeral, I said, Brooke, you got your job. You're in heaven. I'm working for you. I want you to know, everybody that's watching this, there's tons of stuff that you do every day that you need to be thanked for. And I work for the thank you fairy. So on behalf of the thank you fairy, for all those times you haven't been thanked, you just got thanked.
Well, that's amazing. I love that message. There's the power of gratitude is tremendous, and it just, you know, will warm any heart. So thank you. Can't imagine a better story than that to end on. So Jeff, many thanks for coming on the show. We really appreciate your time. To our viewers, thanks for tuning in. We're here 3:00 on Thursdays. Next week's Thanksgiving, so we won't be here then, but we'll be sure to update you with our next show soon. And we hope you have a great Thanksgiving holiday. God bless. And Jeff, thanks once more. Take care.